is we have people that frankly don't know what they're doing, but we're now sort of pivoting. As of about 4 days ago, we're pivoting into other subjects, and very strongly, more strongly than I even thought. When I announced that I was going to run for president, which was not an easy thing to do, you know, if you're a successful guy, you do something, you really put yourself out on the line, and yet it's that kind of thinking that we need in the country now. We have to have that kind of thinking, because what's happened over the last fairly long period of time, in all fairness, we just can't keep going on like that. But now, with what's gone on in Paris, and even today, as you know, it's been tragic, what's happening all over, I mean, all over the world, and they want to come into other locations, and they said they want to come into Washington, which means they probably want to come into New York, or they want to come into someplace else. Unlike our president, he says where they're going to go, that's where they're going to go. He's totally predictable. They're unpredictable. So when they say Washington, they mean some other place. But a lot of things have happened over the last few days that really bring it to a point where I'm more and more speaking about security, taking care of us, being strong militarily, always taking care of our vets, our greatest people, our vets, always. In fact, we put in a plan for the vets. It's such a great plan, and they love it, and everybody's happy, because the vets have been treated very badly. In fact, illegal immigrants in many cases are treated better than our veterans. It's hard to believe. And, you know, that's not just a statement. That's not just a statement. That's a statement of fact, and it's a disgrace, frankly. But we're going to straighten that whole situation out. But we're going to have a military that's so strong, so powerful, so respected that, and I say it all the time, nobody's going to mess with us. Nobody's going to mess with us. And so with what's happened to ISIS and with ISIS over the last few days, and it's been happening for a long period of time, we haven't done our job. We haven't gotten rid of them. And we can get rid of them. We can get rid of them swiftly, and we're going to get rid of them swiftly. But and hopefully, you know, hopefully this is not going to be a problem when I get there, if I get there, if I'm the chosen one. Hopefully this won't. Thank you. I appreciate that shout out. But hopefully this product will be eradicated prior to getting there. But if it's not, I'm going to take care of it very, very swiftly, believe me. It's going to be taken care of.
A week ago today, we saw the terrible radical Islamist attacks on Paris.
Right.
Last night, Mali. We now learn from our FBI director, he's got 1,000 active ISIS investigations right now in America in all 50 states. How do we confront radical Islam on American soil?
Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to be able to use the term. We have a president that refuses to use the term. We have a radical Islamic terrorism problem, and I don't know what's going on. Hillary was unable to use the term the other day, and of course she's very concerned that if she angers the president, she's going to end up being indicted. So, you know, she has to be very nice. She has to be extremely nice. She's walking on eggs right now. Boom, boom, boom. She's walking very gently. She is I thought that Democrat debate, it's actually the Democrat debate. You know, they call it the Democratic debate. It's not the Democratic, it's the Democrat debate. It doesn't sound as good, but that's really the name of it. Every network has it wrong. They call it the Democratic debate. It's not. But she, during the Democrat debate, I thought that was an incredible statement. You have the one guy who was the mayor of Baltimore. He shouldn't even be up there. This guy is. Then you have Bernie Sanders, who's sort of caught a little bit of an ear of something because it's a little unique. But, I mean, give me a break. This is not what we need. And his statement on global warming was incredible. The Paris attacks emanated from global warming. I said, wait a minute, let's play that back. I want to hear that. I want to hear that one more time. So he's not a factor. And he actually gave it up when he was doing pretty well. And he was getting the second largest crowds. I have by far the biggest crowds. And this is a record today. Is that right? This is a record for the place.
This is the biggest crowd I have ever seen.
Yeah, this is a record we've given ever. Happy. I'm happy. I love records. I just love records. But, you know, when he really gave it up in order to get a good soundbite, when he dropped the whole thing on the emails, no, the emails, no problem. She's under investigation by the FBI, it's no problem. So he dropped that. And I happen to think that Hillary probably nothing will happen because I think she's being totally protected by the Democrats. I think that the party and the president is protecting her. So even though Petraeus was sentenced very severely, even though many people went to jail for doing about 5% of what she did, I think she's probably going to be their nominee and probably going to run unimpeded with the criminal investigation. I think it's outrageous because, frankly, what she did is absolutely criminal by every standard. You can look at many different statutes. But it'll be a big topic of conversation. At least if I go, it will be a big topic of conversation. But she's being protected, and that's not the way our country is supposed to be run. And frankly, I think it's a disgrace.
And here's a question, a great question from a Wofford College junior, Connor Jasso. Now that Russia has inserted itself militarily in Syria on such a large scale, how would you restore American leadership in the Middle East, or is it too late to do that?
Well, it's never too late, but the question is, what do we want to do? We've been tied up, and I believe, and I use this term, militaristic. I am the most militaristic person in this room, believe me. I know when to use it. I was totally opposed, most of you know this, but I was totally opposed to the war in Iraq. I said it's going to destabilize the Middle East. In 2003 and 2004, I was sent, actually, a delegation from the White House came to see me because they wanted to convince me that it was a good thing, because for some reason I get disproportionate publicity. I don't know why. And they had big articles that Trump was against the war. This is in 2003, 2004. Actually, in 2004, Reuters did a huge article, Trump opposed to the Iraq war. But I just viewed it as something that we shouldn't be involved in. Why are we doing this? We're going to destabilize. Because if you look, Iran and Iraq were the same militarily, the same. They fight all the time. You know, that's what they do. That's all they do. Fight, fight. They fight. We want to do other things, right? So they fight. So they go this way. They go that way. They'd go this way. Then Saddam Hussein would throw some gas. The other side would throw some, and then they stop for a couple of years. Then they start fighting. I said, if you knock out one or the other, in this case Iraq, the other one is going to just take over, is going to take over whoever's left. And so what happens is Iran, as sure as you're sitting here, Iran now is taking over Iraq. Iraq, people don't realize, has the second largest oil reserves in the world. Nobody realizes that. Nobody ever talks about it. It's amazing. Immensely wealthy. They have the second largest oil reserves in the world. And I said, that's going to happen. I said, they're going to take it over, and that will be a disgrace. And beyond that, the entire Middle East has become a total mess with Libya, between Libya and everything, Syria. But they took it over, and I said, they're going to get these oil reserves. So then we go in, and then our president announces when he's leaving, which is a huge mistake, because now the enemy said, wait a minute, he actually told us a date when he's leaving. Let's pull back. Why should we get killed? You know, you read all about they don't mind dying and going wherever they go with lots of virgins, right? That's what they say, with plenty of virgins. Ay, ay, ay. But you know what? They don't want to die so quickly. Don't kid yourselves. They don't want to die so quickly. So they pull back, we leave, and then they go in, and it's a total mess. So Iran is taking over. And then if you remember, so I said, don't go into Iraq. Then I said, well, look, you're in. Now, what Obama did was horrible, because the way he got out, he announced a date. Date was a disaster. And then he got out. And now the whole thing's a mess. And I said, if you're going to get out, you got to leave the troops. You got to leave some troops there, which he didn't do. And this is how ISIS formed. This is where it all came from, because the people in charge of Iraq were totally one-sided. They didn't take care of anybody else except themselves. And we have a mess. But I said, take the oil. Remember that? Take the oil. I'd always say it. And I was criticized so badly. I've been saying that for 2.5, 3 years. I say, if you're going to get out, take the oil. And they'd say, oh, what a terrible thing to say. That's a sovereign nation. Sovereign nation. So I said, take the oil. And they never took the oil. Then lately, over the last 4 or 5 months, I've said, break up the oil, because the oil is where ISIS is getting a big portion of its wealth. So I'd say, hit the oil, hit the oil. They'd say, oh, what a ridiculous. And if you remember, Obama had one of his military people on to say what a ridiculous idea. Well, 2 days ago, they started hitting the oil, okay? I said, you hit the oil and you take the wealth. So it's very sad what's happened. I mean, it's a very, very sad situation going on in the Middle East. And, it would be really nice and another thing I said, Russia's hitting. Russia. Now, they just blew up a Russian plane. ISIS took credit for it. I believe that. I believe it was a bomb. ISIS took credit. And Russia doesn't want ISIS. So we're hitting ISIS a little bit. You know, we're doing ding, ding, because Obama wants to be politically correct, right? So we're not having much of an impact. But I said, if Russia wants to hit ISIS, let them hit. And some people said, oh, well, they want to take the credit. I said, what's the credit? We've been tied up in the Middle East for so long. You know, Afghanistan's our longest war ever. Essentially, the whole thing is our longest war. It's all one big mess. But Afghanistan's the longest war. I want to rebuild our country. We have a country that's falling apart. Our infrastructure is falling apart. Our military is falling apart. General Orellana, the other day, I saw him on television. He said, we're the worst prepared that we've ever been as a nation, our military. The worst prepared. That's a big statement. The worst prepared that we've ever been, because we're decimating military and we're not even winning. We never win anymore. When I was growing up, we used to win. In fact, they said we never lost a war. Now we never win. We never win anything. As an example, to the victor belong the spoils. So why didn't we take the oil? You know, in the old days, people would have a victory and they'd take whatever they want. They'd take the country. They'd take the country. We spend, think of it, we spend $2 trillion. $2 trillion. Does anyone know what trillion means? A lot of people don't even know what trillion means. This was a word that wasn't used 5 years ago, 6 years ago. $2 trillion, if you think about it, in Iraq. We have thousands of people killed, over 5,000, but thousands of young, wonderful people killed. We have wounded warriors who I love all over the place. They're all over the place. And they're the greatest people. And we have them all over. And we leave. We just leave like nothing happened. We leave. And I say, to the victor belongs the oil. Why didn't we keep the oil? And nobody can answer. And then finally, 3 days ago, they start hitting the oil. It's too late. I mean, look, it's too late. It's better now than never doing it. But we should have done this a long time ago. If we had the oil, there wouldn't be ISIS, because ISIS is making $1 million a day with the oil. So now finally they're hitting it. And I said hit it because that's the source of their wealth. Another source of their wealth, though, is banking. I'm very good at banking. I'm a very, very good at it. But banking, they're being sent money through back channels and through very intricate banking channels all over the place by our so-called friends. Okay, friends. Wealthy nations, they're getting them money. Now, I don't know because they like them or because they're afraid of them. It doesn't make any difference to me. But a lot of money is coming through intricate banking channels, and that's got to be stopped. And the people I'm running with, believe me, they never even heard of what I'm talking about now. They don't know about it. They have no clue, and it's not going to change. You have a senator in this place that doesn't, I mean, honestly, he's a very nice man, Lindsey Graham, doesn't have a clue, believe me. Doesn't have a clue. Although he's not doing too well on the polls, so I don't really care. I shouldn't talk about it.
Just a few years ago, the then FBI director, Robert Mueller, testified to Congress that in 1 year, this is like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we caught 59,000 people from countries other than Mexico illegally trying to come into this country. And these countries included Somalia, Yemen, Pakistan, Syria, you name it. What do we do to keep bad people and bad things out of this country?
Such a good, now I've been saying this. So when I announced, I said illegal immigration, I took a lot of heat. Rush Limbaugh said he took more incoming than any human being I think I've ever seen. He said that. And I never heard the term incoming as it pertained to the press. Those people, look at all those cameras rolling up there. Oh, that's beautiful. Hello, folks. No, but honestly, 30% of them are honest. Okay, 30. At a max. But some of them are really good, but about 30, I figure about 30%. But I've been saying this a long time, and I took such heat. And a lot of it was what I said was misconstrued, and it was, you know, they take quarter sentences and they don't say the rest, and you saw what we went through. And honestly, we made the whole subject of illegal immigration the biggest factor in this whole race. And it was not, I don't think it would have been mentioned. I don't think it's a fact. I don't think it would have been even mentioned. And it became the biggest factor in the race. Everybody was talking. First, I took heat. I mean, I was really taking, Macy's said, we can't sell your shirts and ties because we're going to have pickets in front. Mexicans are going to, I said, the Mexicans love me. I employ thousands of Mexicans. They love me. What are you talking about that? The head of Macy's, he said, we can't do this. Well, I heard they're going to picket Macy's. I said, so let them picket for 35 minutes. Then they're going to want to go get lunch, and you'll never see them again. It happens to me all the time. It's true. Okay, Donald, what do we do? I mean, Macy's was extremely disloyal to me, I have to tell you that. But some others. But you know what? I have to do what I have to do. I don't care. I have to do. And I brought up the subject of illegal immigration, big league. And then people started to say, about 2 weeks, took a while, but people started to say, you know, he's right. And then you had tremendous numbers coming out, tremendously poor numbers and bad numbers coming out about the crime. The crime wave is incredible. And then you had Kate, and beautiful Kate in San Francisco, shot in the back by an illegal immigrant. And we had so many others. Jamil, and a wonderful young student who was going to go on a scholarship, full scholarship, football scholarship. This is a great kid, great father, was a friend of mine. And he was shot right through the head just by standing. He was walking home from a deli. He got himself a sandwich and his father. They were going to have a sandwich together. And this guy passed him and just shot him. Took out a gun, shot him in the head 4 or 5 times. And when he went down, he went like this, and he shot his hands off because it was a .45, and shot him right through the hands. I mean, the whole thing was so horrible. And so many other cases, illegal immigrant. And people started saying, you know, Trump might be right. He might be right. Now they know I'm right, and it's become a big factor. And you were just telling me how well he was telling me about the polls. He knew more about my polls than I did. Can you believe this? But you were just saying about how good they are. But I think a lot of it has to do with illegal immigration. And then to get back to your question, you bring it to today, and a lot of people are viewing the whole Parisian disaster, which is just a horrible thing, but they view that as part of safety and part of borders and part of the fact that we're going to have borders, and they're going to be borders, strong borders on the southern border and everywhere else. And just to finish, we are going to have a wall, and we're going to have a big wall and a real wall. And Mexico is going to pay for the wall. I will tell you that. Mexico's paying for the wall. So when people saw that, and they understand now, a lot of the candidates that I'm running against are sort of coming my way. You know, I was out there by myself. Now all of a sudden they're saying, you know, I think a wall's a good idea. A wall said 5 weeks ago they were saying, you got to be kidding. The other thing that's funny, and they'll never be able to do that because they're just politicians. They're all politicians. But when I say Mexico's going to pay, I'm not playing games. I'm not just saying that. I'm a business guy. It's like CNBC. They were going to have a 2-hour debate, and then they sold all their commercials for numbers that they never thought possible, and they made it 3 hours. And I said, you're not going to do that. And I protested. And within about 2 minutes, I convinced them not to do it. I said, that's not right. Who wants to sit for 3 hours watch? I don't care. I can stand for 25 hours and do a debate. But who wants to do that? And everybody said, oh, but you won't be successful. And if you call them, they won't do it. I said, they'll do it. They'll do it. Believe me. I got all the ratings anyway. So I said, I won't participate in the debate. And they said, OK, we'll make it 2 hours. But we got them down. We got them down too. And the same thing with Mexico's actually easier. Because we have a trade imbalance with Mexico of $45 billion a year. The war's going to cost probably $8 to $10 billion. And that's super wall. That's not, you know, they were going to spend more money on a little wall like this where you just drive over it, right? You saw the walls they built where they have a ramp. And they built the ramp on the wall. They built the wall. And they have a ramp where the cars go over at 40 miles an hour. And they have the drugs. They're loaded up with drugs. And they just go over. We're going to have a real wall. We're going to have a wall. See the ceiling up there? That's about the height. Maybe we'll go a little bit higher. Believe me. We're going to have a real wall. And walls, remember this, ask Israel. Walls work. You know, in Israel, 99.7%. That's how it works, okay? That's pretty good. And they have a wall, and walls work. In fact, this migration, which is a disgrace that we could have allowed and other countries with their stupidity, but us, by destabilizing the Middle East, you have the migration. And now some of the countries want to build walls. And you know why they want to build them? Because they work. And we're going to build one. And if people go back, if the press goes back and looks, a number of years ago, like 10 or 12, people wanted the wall. And one of the reasons the wall was never built was they could never get, listen to this one, I'll tell you who'd like this is Bernie Sanders. They could never get an environmental impact statement approved. Can you believe it? They could never get, because a toad or something was in the way, probably a snake in the desert. But they could never get an environmental impact statement approved. Can you believe this? And then you look at China. They're building islands in the South China Sea. They're dredging that sea. They've got the biggest excavators you've ever seen. Not caterpillars, by the way, they use aero. But they've got the biggest excavators, and they're dredging the ocean, they're dredging the sea, and they're building islands in the middle of the sea. And I said jokingly to a friend in China, so how long did it take you to get the environmental permits? He goes, what? What? He didn't know what I was talking about. I was kidding. I have to say that for the press because they'll think I was serious. But what you'll read tomorrow, Donald Trump said that they couldn't get environmental but think of it. We're at such a disadvantage with the way we do things. But we will get everything approved. We will build that wall. It'll be a tremendous wall. It'll be a fabulous thing. And by the way, so important, and I say it, that wall will have a big, beautiful, open door, and people are going to come into our country, but they're going to come in legally.
And that's
he's doing a good job. No, he lets me talk. A lot of people cut me off. I don't like it.
That's a great lead-in to the next question from a Wofford College freshman, Jonathan Tokay. How do you secure our border without hindering or hurting trade in our economy as a whole?
Okay. Well, one of the things, and I always talk about, I never really get to the economics of the border, but I do have to bring it up because it is an important factor. It's actually a great question. We lose a tremendous amount of business by having a weak border because business comes over. First of all, what is pouring over our border is drugs. When we have this deficit, we're talking about having an imbalance of $40 or $45 billion, 40 to 45, and this has gone on for years. That's not including drugs. And if you look at the drugs that are pouring across that border, it could be a number bigger than even what we're talking about. It's massive. So we're losing a tremendous amount in that way. But what happens is we're also losing a lot of jobs because people are coming in, they're taking jobs that we could have for our people, and don't believe the number of 5.2%. It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. We have 100 million people in a workforce. These are people that want to work, many of which want to work. They've looked for jobs for months and months and months, and you and I were discussing it. They'll look for jobs for months, and they can't get it, so they give up. They quit. They give up. They say, I can't get a job. I cannot do it. So they go back, and now they're taking off the roll. So that this number, the 5.2, the unemployment number that you read about all the time, we're doing so well, the real number is 25%. Okay, that's the real number. Okay, and that number, in my opinion, and I don't even blame this on Obama, that was done years ago, although it's gotten weaker and weaker over the years. But that number was devised by politicians that wanted to make themselves look good. That's all it is. It's not a real number. It's a phony number. Every time I hear it, I turn off the television because it doesn't matter. They say unemployment went down. When I went to Mobile, Alabama, I had 35,000 people. I went to Oklahoma, I had 20,000 people. Wherever I go, I have crowds that are so massive. It's only restricted by the size of the arena, like this. I mean, it's literally only restricted. And I told somebody the other day, if the real number was 5.2%, I'd have 15 people sitting in the front row. It's just not. I mean, we have got tremendous problems. Our jobs have been taken away. They've gone to Asia. They've gone all over the place. They've gone to Mexico. Tremendous numbers of jobs have gone to Mexico. I mean, Nabisco is moving their big plant from Chicago. You know that story. I talk about it because I used to like Oreos. I don't eat Oreos anymore. Nabisco has a big plant in Chicago. They've just announced they're moving that plant to Mexico. And which is terrible. I mean, how does that help us? It doesn't help us. There's nothing that helps us. And they're actually incentivized to do that. Look, folks, we're run by stupid people. We're run by such stupid people. It's so stupid. Ford Motor Company, great company, they're building a $2.5 billion plant in Mexico. They're going to make cars, trucks, and parts. And they're going to sell them all over. They're going to bring them right into the United States. No tax, no nothing. In the meantime, they close up plants in Michigan. They close up plants in other locations. It's horrible. In Tennessee, they were going to build a foreign company was going to build a big plant. They were all set to sign the documents. The deal was practically done. Boom, Mexico got them. I mean, Mexico is going to be the car capital of the world. It's going to be the car capital of the world. We don't know what's happening. Mexico, in a sense, is the new China. And I'm saying this with great respect for Mexico. I wish our leaders would do the same thing. I have great respect for what they're doing in Mexico. And I love the Mexican people. but they're taking advantage of our people because they're much better, smarter negotiators. Sort of interesting, since I've been doing this, Carl Icahn, one of the great business people of our time, tremendously wealthy man, great negotiator. I know him for many years, just a great negotiator, and others. But Carl endorsed me. And see, I call that a real endorsement. Some of these guys, they get endorsed by some third-rate politician that's been terrible, and they make a big deal. You get an endorsement from Carl Icahn. I probably never endorsed anybody before. But he knows that I know about corporate inversions, where basically companies are leaving our country, leaving the jobs, and moving to other countries. You know, it used to be where they moved from New York to Florida to avoid taxes or get rid of, you know, some of the taxes. But now they're moving from the United States to other countries. And it's an inversion where they can't get their money back. Also, they have $2.5 trillion, at least in other countries. They can't bring it back into this country. And by the way, Democrats and Republicans both agree we should let the money come back in. For 3 years now, they've agreed. They haven't been able to make a deal. Washington it's such a gridlock. You know, I use the inversion story to tell you that, okay, it's one thing when Republicans and Democrats, they don't get along, they can't make a deal. That's one thing. And there are plenty of things that they disagree on. But here's something, $2.5 trillion, I think it's much more than that, but it's at least $2.5 trillion is outside. This is money that's essentially owned by American companies. They can't bring the money back into the country. Politicians